All right, 6 o'clock. I'm gonna get this thing started. Let's do this. Welcome to those who are here, and hopefully more will show up to get this information. So, all right, let's share my screen. Let's start the PowerPoint and we'll get it going. PowerPoint. I'm gonna be popping in and out of the PowerPoint. So, welcome to week 10. We are in the final week of our descriptive statistics. Next week, we start doing actual testing, and we'll finish that through the rest of the semester. The big thing about this is that there are differences between the descriptive statistics, which are your descriptives and your frequencies, and let's say a one sample t-test and all the rest of the tests you're going to be doing. So in the idea that you need to understand that it's separate. They do cross over and you will be using them in your testing, but this is really for one section. When you're in terms of writing, it's one section of it. Okay. Thank you. I read every one of your posts for your readings, and they were all solid. You're bringing up good topics, and you're talking about it, and you're bantering back and forth a little bit, and the responses are strong, and that makes a big difference in what you're doing, because it shows that you're actually looking for things that are not really, we don't have enough time in a week to go over every single thing. That's why I mentioned before, we're doing our best to build something that you're going to be able to take into your DNP and run with it and feel very comfortable, as comfortable as you possibly can be going through that process. And we're trying to keep it from being a complete and utter struggle to understand this. Okay, so thank you very much for that. Working ahead, the one thing I want to add this week is I love some of you are just jumping ahead and jumping off the deep end. Please don't work ahead until no earlier in any other area until Friday. I will post an announcement when they're ready, because what the problem is with this week, and I don't know if the person's in the room who told me that, but thank you. What I turned in is not what's on the screen in terms of the Excel and the SPSS. They have been reloaded today with the right material. If you can't find something, please reach out. I will let you know. But don't work ahead, because on tomorrow and Thursday, I'm going to the next couple weeks and making sure everything's all lined up. So if you want to work ahead, you can just get going and all the data is in the right place. This is the first time in 15 years that I've actually given all the material to somebody and them do it. I build my own classes. I rebuilt a lot of stuff in the class I had last semester because some of it just didn't make sense. So I changed out and added some stuff, and basically it's what we're doing now. So just so you know, that hold off on working ahead. Doesn't mean you can't start studying and looking at stuff ahead, but don't do any of the work until I tell you which weeks are now. I'm for sure that they are okay, because I figured that it was just I just add the files. It doesn't change anything, but it seems like it changed some stuff. So if there's any other problems and you don't understand it, just reach out. A lot of you have done that, and I really appreciate that. Okay, a little bit of last week's review. There's a couple things. One of them is that your introduction is supposed to be a paragraph. It's not supposed to have labels on it. Okay, those labels were there for you to know what to do. You have an introductory sentence. You have a research question, which should be formatted correctly, which is the research question for this study is as follows, and then the question. Okay, and then you have your purpose statement. Be careful words that you use. Words have big time meaning. It's like the word run. We don't run anything, because when you write it in a paper, your paper can't run, your paper can't look, your paper can't see, it just can't. Like I told them the same stupid joke the whole time. If your paper can run, look, or see, call me, man. We're on our way to Vegas. We're gonna make some money, because it doesn't happen. You're an outside observer looking in. You're not really, and unless you're doing a qualitative, you're not an active participant in your paper. It's not a narrative. It's not an opinion paper. It's not that. It's a factual paper, whether it's facts from when you do your lit review in the past, okay, or when you're done. You will interject yourself slightly in terms of conclusions and what they mean, but it's not really you. So if you're adding to that in a narrative form, you open yourself up for editing. You open your, not only from me, but from your mentor in your DNP, but also when you open yourself up for questions that are not, that you won't be able to answer, because it's about, it's something you did rather than what the data shows or what the previous research shows. You're almost like an outside observer. Okay. So in the descriptive review, a lot of you did really well once we honed everything down. Remember, it's very direct and very to the point. Those that have either taken infographics or read a lot of journal articles, and I didn't mention this last week, and I apologize, but the bottom line is this is like you're writing the participant section of your paper. This class is a dry as a bone class when you're writing. It's very dry. There's no fluff to it. There's no extra. There's no ups and extras. I know I've beaten the dead horse on that, but this is, I'm using a different sense. The reason being is if you did all of it in that section, there's nothing to talk about in your discussion. So if you read real results sections, methodology section and the results section might point to certain things, and give you general conclusions to the slivers, but that's it. It's very dry, very boring, number based. A lot of times, even a qualitative, it's just a whole bunch of quotes that you're going to pick a theme and do some quotes, and then you're done. So understand, methodology is where I live when I do dissertations and master's thesis. I help people set all that up in their surveys and their qualitative questions. So, and the reason for that is because you want an outcome that is beneficial. And number two, you want output that's going to give you data. You can't graduate without data. So choosing a good topic that's going to give you robust data, which means that when you do this, when you're doing this portion of your statistical portion of it, it becomes much easier because things will start to pop off the page. If you write your results section really well and in the standard method that we're doing it, whether there's little nuances in there from your DNP instructor, by the time you're done, you should be able to look at that and go, oh, I see this and I see that and I see that. Oh, I see that. I see this. I see that. And that's how you draw conclusions. Some will be very straightforward. Some will be kind of weak, but added with something else that you're doing will make it dynamic. Starts with your participants. Your participants are the most important part, technically, of if you're doing a survey. Let's say you're surveying nurses. Okay, the sampling method is going to be probably convenient sample because you're looking for nurses. You're looking in terms of that. You're in your paper, you'll talk about inclusion criteria. If you're using data that is already prepared, that is your participant. When you talk about, you won't really say participants, but when you talk about the data itself, you'll be talking about what that data is and what parameters that data was drawn from, how it was drawn, what was it trying to do. It's different than if you had participants. If you had participants, now all of a sudden, if you, let's say you're doing nurses, you have to be able to tell a little bit about the nurses. You have to know how long they were a nurse, what type of nurse, what kind of departments have they worked in over the period of time. Okay, maybe what their degree was in. Crazy questions such as, are any of their family nurses? Those are types of questions. Those are demographic questions that really go to it. Now, now we're in the second week. Remember that descriptive is about a number. So it's that number. If you're in SPSS, it's going to be when you go to the variable view, and I'll show you that in a little while, but when you go to that variable view, it's going to say none in the values. because there's no value to a number in SPSS. That's what you need, because you can't do words in SPSS. You can't do words in Excel and count them up. You have to put a number next to it. I mean, there's probably a special way to actually do that, but I don't know. And I'm not going to spend all that time doing it. So you can hand count it if it's words. You know, my undergrad at San Diego Christian, if they wanted to know what sport they were in or what business they were in or certain things in education, or was a long list, I made them count it up and do frequencies by hand. Because if not, you have to have a single line for every single one. And then you've got it's a lot of extra work. So in the descriptives, it's got to be extremely straightforward. You don't want to leave any room for questions on your participants. Okay. So frequencies, I forgot to check this before and that's it. Frequencies. So as we move into frequencies, the best way that I can tell you about frequencies is it's all about your participants. Again, it's all about your participants, but it's a different kind. Sorry, hold on. Close that out. Nope. Okay. It's a different way. Before you're looking at a minimum and maximum, and you're looking at standard deviation and your mean. Those are the four here. Here you're looking at count and percentage. That's it. Okay. That cannot be done. It can be done with a number. So let me give you an idea. So this is SPSS again. Okay. So if I go here and I go descriptives in, I go to descriptives. Oops, I'm going to take this out. Playing around with something. And I put age over here and I hit OK, and it comes up. It comes out perfect. But now if I do the same thing and I go analyze, descriptive, and then I go frequencies, it will go and take me, and I slide it over and I drop it down here. And now it's going to give me these frequencies. You see this number 1 here? If we try to run anything that has a lot of information in it, that has a 1 in it, it has no standard deviation. So a lot of times when the numbers come up and it's a large list of numbers, this is a smaller list at 30, but let's say you add 100, you're going to have a whole bunch of number ones. When you go to run it, you're going to have a whole bunch of crazy data out there that has no standard deviation because it's 1. It's like going against yourself. Okay, it's like going against yourself. So understand that frequencies look at things that are not an actual number. And all they do is they tell somebody how many times something happens. That's it. I can't get any special or anything like that. It's how many times something happens. Same thing in age. Okay, we know that their frequency was 20 years old. But between when we look at the range and we look at the mean of and we look at the histogram, we can tell which direction is higher. Which level had higher? Was it higher to, let's say, 40, or was it lower? Did it go lower towards 20? So the descriptive is much better in this case, because it will give you a better mean and a standard deviation, because you're not going to get that. You can run it in this, but it's just extra and you don't really need it. Okay. But we now know that we know the minimum, we know the maximum in this, we know the mean, and we know the standard deviation. Okay. So I'm going to close this out real quick. So this is SPSS, and this is a much larger, this is what data looked like last semester. You had like 19 lines and use 3 lines. So in this one, we go variable view. And in variable view, I don't know if I can make it any bigger. Let me see. No, I can't. So sorry if you can't see it real well. So you have the word none here. And again, age has a none on it. Okay. Gender, if I hit the 3 little dots over here, it tells me 1 is male and 2 is female. Okay. And then these are not done, and neither are these, but these are none because these were the themes, and we'll talk about that next week. So basically anything that runs in an idea of like a multiple choice of any kind is going to be a frequency. So I'm going to run both these real quick and talk about them generally. And then I'm going to show you an example of what your paragraph should look like, because there's no histograms this week, no SPSS boxes. Okay. So in Excel, I'm sorry, in SPSS, we're going to choose classification, job, work hours, and first college. So it's analyze, and then we go down here to description, and then we go to frequencies, and then all we have to do is go classification. Take age out so I don't mess all this up. Job and first college. I think no, I don't think it was job. Work hours. What it doesn't matter. And first college. Okay. And basically all you have to do is hit OK. And there it is. Okay. So I used this one, and I this is an older data set for me, but what I did in this one was let's see, I think I can make this one bigger, but I can't. Okay. I made it so it was basically 31. Okay. Because in this case, there was a missing variable, and missing variables are, we did a whole week of these last semester, and I was bored to death reading. It's very simple. If I'm doing a paired sample t-test, and I do 9 on the first one, I do 8 on the second one, there's one missing. But now I take the same 8 and I do those, and I take that one out. Lot of things I saw, USK, St. Catherine's, and some other places that they went 8 and 9. Well, the data doesn't match. The data has to match. So in this one, there's one missing. So if I was, and you can see that if you have infographics, when you're reading, they say, well, we sent out 450 surveys and we got 20, we only got 25 back. Well, there's not so much missing data, but there'll be other tests that it's called maturation. So they started out and but they didn't finish. So you would lose that data, but in your actual write-up, you would say there were four participants who had maturation and were not eligible for the second half of the study. Something simple. Again, you just have to tell people what you're doing. But I'm going to tell you that I'm about 99% sure that there is no way that your DNP, and if I was running your if it was a regular dissertation, master's thesis, or undergrad capstone, you wouldn't have missing variables. It's so much extra work to write all that up every single time, to regurgitate it over and over again, that you had one that was not. It's just not worth it. Okay, you go out and you find the 30, and you just forget about the person who missed questions, and basically they just didn't answer questions, and they're allowed to, but then you make decisions based on that, whether you're going to get some more that are full and make your life so much easier. Okay, so basically, as you can see, this for classification, this is basically what I'm going to call it, what grade you're in. These people were juniors and seniors. There was 27, and then you'll see that you'll see the valid percentage here. In this case, this would be the true percentage because of this right here. So this is the total. And basically all that is this number divided by basically 31. Okay. The small divided by the big, and I'll show that in Excel how that works. So basically you're reporting that there was 22 juniors, and I'm going to say that their percentage was 73.3. So this is what it really is with the missing variable. This is what it is with no missing variable. The valid percent means that it was just of the 30. Okay. So 22, 73.1%, and seniors were 8, at 26.7%. Okay, and you go down here, and now this is called a range question. 0 to 5, 5 to 10, how many hours you're working, and you'll see the numbers here. When you report from big to small. Doesn't matter what it looks like or anything. It's big to small. Okay, same thing down here. Yes and no. And basically it's that and the valid percentage, period. Okay, and the valid percentage. If the total was 30 and there was no missing, it would be this percentage right here. Okay, and that's why I say, why have missing data? Find a way to not have missing data, and your life is easy. Okay, are there any questions so far? Where are you guys?
Like, this is Julie. Sorry. So
Sure.
you said to go from big to small, but that one looked like it was like small to big. Or am I missing something?
You don't worry about what's here. You write it. When you write it, it's from big to small. So your first
when you
variable
write
would
it.
be
Okay.
junior. Sorry, I did not say that. I can't find.
Okay, great. Thank you.
No problem. Give me 2 seconds here. I'm losing my mind here more than normal. Okay, so I'm going to keep going. Okay, so basically, this is the data that you need. Okay, one more time: frequency and percent. For you guys from now on, it will be frequency and percent. And they're not going to, in your data, there's no missing variables. But it's important to understand about missing variables and understand the importance of trying not to have them to begin with, but what to do if you do have them. Okay, so let me bust into Excel here. It's a little more fun. Okay, so let's take job here. And this one I can make bigger. So I'm just going to take the first one here, and I'm going to take job, and it's basically a yes or no answer. Okay, so over here, I'm going to put a 1 and I'm going to put a 2 because those are the answers that are given here. Okay, and then I go equals FR, and then it comes up as frequency. Now there's a data array and a bins array. That data array is your numbers that you need. And I have this in a video. It's in the announcements, but it's not done. I got to put a comma here, and then I've got to go to this one, and I have to go to the bins array, which is here, 1 and 2. And then I have to put behind it, and then I hit turn here, and there's my answers, 25 and 5. It's easy to show that that's 30. Okay, it's easy to show that that's 30. Okay, now over here on this one, I have to do an equal sign. I'm sorry, I lied. Let me try that again. I now put in 30, or I can either that, or I can, let me take this out real quick. There's 2 ways of doing this. I can go up to auto sum it up, and I hit here and it's 30. Great, I'm done. I put an equal sign. Remember I was talking about going small to big, small divided by big. Hit return, and then it's equal sign, small divided by big, equal sign. And then I take these 2 and I highlight them. I right click. Then I go down to format cells. I go to percentage. I want 2 places, and I hit OK. And then I should be able to auto sum this nice and smooth, and it should be 100%. Okay, that's it. Do that for each one. So like in this one right here, it said work, you're going to have 1 through 4. Over here again, you're going to have 1 through 2. So you can basically just copy this I think you can copy it and put it over here and then just change it. I don't know if the formula up here would change, but I don't know. Well, I didn't try that one. So somebody has that trick. That's great. So, and that's how you get your frequencies. So now that we've done both of those, let me minimize this. So the next portion of this is, writing it up. This is what I showed you last week, basically. And let me make it bigger. And this is both. Okay. And why did that get changed? Give me 2 seconds. And sometimes Word is not going to like what you're doing, but you're writing scientifically. So I'm going to highlight some stuff. This is how many participants there were. So basically at the beginning of this, with frequencies, your descriptions of frequencies, I'm telling a whole bunch about the participants. Understand that 90% of every article that you read in infographics is a portion of a bigger entity of data, large amount of data that they wrote. So my 120-page master's thesis turned into a 25-page article to be presented. Everything's not in there. It's only what that author believes is extremely important to know. So you're not doing all of your demographics. You're doing whatever demographics you believe are the most important to show the best about your participant. Be like me trying to introduce any of you to somebody that's really important. I'm not going to sit there and talk about you for 20 minutes, because after a while, I'm going to give whoever that is I'm talking to the best that I can. Hey, this is so-and-so. They are a doctoral nursing student at Point Loma. They're an amazing student, and I can say nothing bad. And think about this, about the amount of work they do outside, and I'm working on your doctorate, and it's just an amazing, just that little bit is enough to make them understand who the participants are. So, okay, so this one is your participants. I'm just going to start highlighting stuff. Why is it not highlighted? Because it's white. So that right there is your participants. This right here is one of your descriptives. Okay, here is another descriptive. And you see how direct and to the point it is. You're not making your reader guess anything. It says 25 males, 83.3%, and 5 females. There's no extra words. That's being concise. That's APA writing. It's being concise. Okay. Now, these are demographic questions. For the demographic question of, are you on a scholarship? There were 21 who received a scholarship, 70%, and 9 who did not receive a scholarship, 30%. Okay. The socioeconomic status was categorized into 3 classes: middle class, socioeconomic, 24, no space, 80%, upper socioeconomic, 4, 13 and 3%, and then lower socioeconomic status, 2, 6.7%. Okay. Now, have you ever played water polo for 10 years? Participants answered yes, 25, and no, 5, 15.15%. That's it. All of yours should be in a paragraph that looks just like this. Okay. Not that you don't have any descriptors this week. It's just what it is. So it's the top paragraph with your introductory sentence, your research question, and your purpose statement. And then how it should be basically 3 sentences, or 1 sentence, or 2 sentences, how many of our variables it is. Doesn't matter what order you put the variables in. That's not the point. The idea is it should look just like this. Okay, that's the same as it is in the video. No ups, no extras. You don't add anything to it. You don't say, well, there were 25 males, 83.3%, and 5%. I mean, there was more males than females. That's a conclusion that is not necessary, because the numbers say that, and you're a scholar now. It's scholarly to do that. Okay. It doesn't need, a lot of this doesn't need any seasoning on top. You know, there's no Salt Bay. You don't do any Salt Bay on top of it. It's just right there. Okay. And Karen, give me 1 second. Okay. Let me get out of this and try and find you guys. See your faces, but can't find the screen. Let's do the big one. Okay. Oh, there it is. I found a new button. Karen, what was your question?
So for the introductory sentence, basically statement, this paper will examine the characteristics.
Frequencies, whatever you're doing.
Okay, gotcha.
The frequencies.
Frequencies, okay. Thanks.
Of 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
That's it. These 2 weeks are tougher than the rest because the introductory sentence is is easier because you're going to be saying this paper will examine a one sample t-test on blank. It'll do an independent sample t-test on blank, whatever you're testing. Okay. Does anybody have any questions? So as we move, remember, there's no SPSS boxes. There's no tables. I'm going to say, I should, next semester, I'll put tables, boxes. You don't do that in this section. There's really technically the only time that you use boxes of any kind are, one would be a correlation. Okay, and you do a matrix. You'll see that in journal articles. If you're doing an ANOVA, you would generally have a table because it is, and it doesn't show a lot. There's a lot of data in an ANOVA, but you basically just show the numbers and put a star by it saying that it was significant. So there's not a lot to it. And then of course, the only other thing you're going to do is a scatter plot, but you're not going to do the actual tables for the other ones because it's not truly necessary because you're going to be writing on it. Okay. Any other questions? So it's real straightforward, right to the point. You know, basically just get the numbers, plug them in, make them look really good and make them sound good, big to small, and post it. Remember, there's no conclusions drawn from this data. I mean, there's mental ones. Okay, there's more male and female, but it doesn't really mean much. So to finish this off, to give you an idea, the demographics feed your actual testing, except for next week. Okay, but you can infer back in your one sample t-test. So let me give you an example. Let's say you're at the hospital and they're implementing a new procedure. Okay. And you have male nurses and you have female nurses, and they're looking to see how long it takes you to administer. Let's take it out of nurses' hands. They're looking at ways to improve the time it takes to get a person from the room to a testing site, let's say an MRI or whatever it is. And then how long does and how long it takes from the point that they leave the room and to come back. Now there's lots of things to look at. There's could be data on the actual radiology section from the point that they're getting the person to the point that they're releasing them. They can also look at the person leaving the room, from room back to room. They can also, and those are the two major, those basically would be the two majors. But now you can run it on the difference between what male nurses are doing versus female nurses. And I'm just pretending like you're the one doing all the work and taking them to there. We know that somebody else does, but we're using you as a nursing example. You're taking them and you're bringing them back. Okay. Or you can say an orderly's taking them up and back. It doesn't matter. But in this case, we're going to use a nurse again. A nurse wheels them over there and comes back. Nothing happens during that period of time with that room while they're gone, which means the process slows down. Okay. So now I could look at it as a whole and look at just what's happening. Then I can add in the male and the female and see if the male nurses are taking longer than the female nurses to get the job done. Doesn't mean a thing still. But in the end, I'm going to say, well, men are faster than women. Well, now that ends that conclusion. It doesn't give you a reason. It ends that conclusion. But the big part of that is now I can look at both sides. I can look at other factors. I can look at outside influences, those things that are what we call confounding variables in these things. Such as this nurse is lazy. And when I used to do groundskeeping during the summer, and people would take their truck and go off to the dump with all the stuff, and it's time to go check your traps, because something that should take you 15 minutes is taking you a half hour because you are just taking every side. You're taking the long route there and back. Minimizes the time that you have to really work. You can just drive. Okay. Let's say you got somebody as Speedy Gonzalez, they're getting them there, they're pushing them to get done and coming back. Well, what are they doing differently? All this stuff does after this week is give you an opportunity to make a choice on what you're going to do based on data. The sliver conclusion gives you one portion of it. As you get the other parts together and you begin to see things, now all of a sudden things start to pop out and you say, hey, if we did this, this, and this, it may work. Well, now all of a sudden you implement that. That's called an intervention. And you come back 3 weeks later and you run the same data again and see if it sped up. If the male stayed the same and the females rose, well, it's a win. Well, now how do we get the men to go a little bit faster? And then we can keep pushing the women faster. So we're decreasing the amount of time, which means if we're decreasing the amount of time, let's say in an ER room, we're decreasing the amount of time they're laying in a bed, because things are happening faster. They're making decisions faster and they're moving people out. So everything you're doing is looking toward a choice. So let's say you're looking at a basic function of a group, something in the hospital. You're not looking for a conclusion. You're looking for choices. Those conclusions create the choices. Starts with your demographics. Okay. So in the idea that we're looking at how fast you go, what is the age of the participant? Now, of course, you can't go by age discrimination and start saying, hey, you're old and you can't move that fast. That's not the idea. But when we're done, what can we do that the young folks are doing that we can help to make their life a little easier and make it faster for the older folks? Okay. Hopefully that kind of makes sense of the direction we're going. So what you've done to this point is now you know all about the participants you're working with. And when you're writing your DMP, you're going to either be talking about where you got the data and how you got the data and what the validity, the reliability and the validity of that data is. If you're using participants, now it's a different story. You're telling about the participants so everybody knows where they are. Remember that everything is anonymous. So it's male and female. Let's say if you're doing it in San Diego, you're not going to say San Diego. You're going to say Southern California. It's a larger area. It's done at a regional hospital in Southern California. Well, there's tons of those. Okay. You know where it's at. Your participants know where they're at, but it's not something you're going to tell the masses. Okay. You could say the greater San Diego area and still be okay because you still have tons of hospitals along the way, or clinics, or any kind of a setting that you're in. Okay. You could say a VA hospital in the Southern California. Well, we got one in Long Beach, and we got, I think there's one or two down San Diego way. I don't know if there's one like in Riverside. That it would still be Southern California. All right. So that's my best speech for the day. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. Last thing I'm going to leave you with is, it's real important to know what you need to know first, and then move from there to understanding it more. I didn't understand it until I kept doing it. I understood what the test in the next couple weeks. I understood what I'm supposed to have to make this test run. But it wasn't until I started doing the testing that things started to kind of click. Oh, now I understand. Because it's like doing anything else. It is a practice thing. I wouldn't say when I finished my master's that I was any type of statistical genius, but my professor had given me the tools on the basics that when I went into my doctorate and I went to do this class, my beginning class, I whipped through that. I whipped through the whole thing in 2 weeks. It was a 10-week class. I finished it in 2 weeks. I had all of those steps ready to go. And, SPSS, that little line that gives you like a caterpillar line that gives you all the what it is, that coding is what we had to do. So I had SPSS and I already knew how to do it. I did the coding. I did everything in SPSS and I got the code and I just copied it in there. But those are the things I learned as I went along the way. So it's real important to, when we get into these testing, to not try to know every single thing about the test. Right now, you need to know, what do I need out of this test to finish my homework? And I'm sorry, I hate to say it, to finish my homework, my work for the week. And out of that, you will gain a greater understanding of what the test really is. So just keep that in your mind. And some things are not going to make sense. And just allow it to just fester. It'll come to you, whether it's now or if it's when you're doing your DNP, where things are just going to click because maybe the data doesn't hit you the right way. And I've got tons of data sets, and some of them I do, and I go, this doesn't make any sense at all. I don't know what they were doing. And then I've had students go, what did you change some of the questions? How do you do that? You changed the wording and now your data is not really meshing up. So that's it for me. Are there any questions? It's pretty straightforward this week. You kind of should have a kind of an idea. You now have a great example of what it should look like, and just make it happen. Do the first one. I'll do the second, and then the second and third are real easy. The data in there should be correct now. And you know what? She didn't do it till this afternoon. Give me 1 second to find where I'm at here. Zoom. Let's go Zoom, and let's go modules. And let's slide down to 9, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. Gender and type of dance. So this is your key. 1 is male, 2 is female. Okay. Race. Okay. And then hip hop, modern, and ballet. There's only 3. If you have already done your homework for the first one, and it was on the other one that had the number 4, I think I've already graded all of them. stay with that and finish with that. If you have any problems, reach out to me. Okay. From this point on, you have the key there, and this is what my original looked like. So, all right. So we're going to pop back out here, and we're going to say, if there aren't any questions, I'm going to pray you guys out. And if there's any questions, you can go. If not, you can stay. And I'll get this posted probably first thing in the morning. All right. All right. Heavenly Father, thank you for the day. Thank you for those that showed up today. Thank you for all those that are going to listen in the future. Lord, please bless them as they continue to go and they continue to grow in stats. Please take away the fear of this, to know that it's not really math. It's just basically learning the right way of doing things and making it happen so it reads the right way and makes sense. Lord, even though it will look like hieroglyphics, it really does piece together well to make it understandable, to be able to draw conclusions. Lord, please bless them as they go through the rest of their week. And until we meet again, please, Lord, let them know that my phone is open for them if they have any issues or questions they need to talk about, or have any problems and need understanding, Lord. This is so important at this time because they are busy people doing God's work. So please keep us prosperous, healthy, and free from sin. And our God's people said, amen.
Amen.
All right. So if you have any questions, stay. If you don't, check yourself out, and I will see you soon.
Thanks, Dr. Jeff.
Yes. Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, everybody.
That was good. Bye.
Woo! Echo. Any of you guys have questions? No. Bye.